What if the culture in your school wasn't just something students absorb, but something so powerful, so positive, and so purposeful, it became contagious? In this episode, we're going to explore how one spark of optimism can multiply across classrooms, staff rooms, and entire school communities. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I am your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insights, we empower educators, change makers, and leaders, foster trust, collaboration, and ultimately provide them the tools to create this ecosystem of academic excellence. This week, I heard a quote that transformed my ideology and how I even am going to begin to show up as an educator. And it's led to this conversation that we're going to have today about how positivity multiplies in schools. And if we continue to feed it, then it bleeds into our classrooms, into our teacher-parent interactions, into all of the interactions across our organization. And I think it's so important when we begin to integrate and begin to choose to be positive, even when we're faced with challenging circumstances. So the quote read, "Everything that's been faced can't be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." I'm not sure of the author. I was in class earlier this week and it was stated in class, and I wrote it down and circled it a few times. And it reminds me of so many aspects in my life. And to be vulnerable with you, I've recognized that everything that I have faced in my life cannot be changed. Everything that we face in organizations can't be changed. We can't go back to the past as much as we would like to and change how we interacted with that colleague, or change a decision personally, or change a student-teacher interaction, or a conversation that we had with a colleague of ours. We can't change it. But it's the second part of the quote that really spoke to me. But nothing can be changed until it's faced. And when we think about our responsibility as educators, it's important for us to understand that if we want change, we have to face it. If we want change in our classrooms, if we want change in the interactions between our staff members, if we want change in the interactions between our community partners, if we want change between the interactions of peer-to-peer interactions, or even students as peers, then we have to face some of the realities of what we're experiencing. And in my life as a leader, I've recognized how there's so many things that I wish I could have done differently. There's so many conversations that I wish I wouldn't even have had. There's so many decisions that I wish I wouldn't have made. There's so many actions that I wish I wouldn't have taken. There's so many behaviors that I needed to grow and develop from. And what I've recognized is my approach in remaining positive, remaining optimistic, and remaining faithful in so many different circumstances, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how detrimental the decision, no matter how embarrassing the behavior, and no matter what the loss or the result was, showing up positive costs nothing. Research shows that positivity and positive effect at school predicted greater learning flow, deep engagement, focus, enjoyment over time. And positive emotions acted as a bridge between positivity and academic engagement. Another study, Flourishing Students Program for Adolescents, showed that students who participated had higher positive effect and lower negative effect compared to those in standard classes. Let me just give you one more. Schools implementing the Positivity Project report stronger teacher-student relationships, greater student belonging, and improved classroom culture. On this podcast, we talk a lot about classroom culture, organizational culture. We talk a lot about leadership, but we don't really talk about the stages that it will take for you to become the leader that you need to become, and how when you become that leader, it's going to allow you to be more positive, more optimistic, and more effective and productive in how you're approaching your specific responsibilities as a leader. One of the things, again, after I heard the quote of everything that's been faced can't be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced, it reminded me of an onion. And recently I've been seeing a lot of pictures of fruit sitting next to other fruit, and one of the fruit is rotten. And then it shows that when a rotten tomato is next to a ripe tomato, it speeds up the process of the ripe tomato becoming not eatable or unedible in a sense. And when I see these types of posts, the caption or even the words on the picture always go to the environment and the power of your environment. And you're going to grow faster and better when you're in a positive environment, and be close to the people, or be mindful of the people that are closest to you, and all of these different things. And it's reminded me, and it led me to even have this conversation with you all today. It's the same thing in school spaces. It's the same thing within your organization. And if we're allowing negativity, if we're allowing that rot around us, if we're allowing gossip, if we're allowing these things, then it's going to damage the very institution that we are working to build. It's damaging the very goals, the very expectations, the very standards in which of excellence that we are here to be able to create as leaders within the organization. So today I want to talk about just 5 tips, 5 key strategies that I believe that I'm using currently in my personal life, and how I believe these strategies can be implemented within an organization so that you can not just have positivity multiplying in your school, but so that you can actually become the leader that your optimism, your belief, your development, your purpose-driven style can bleed into others, and then it can spread like wildfire in the positive or in the right way. All right, so let's get into it. One of the things that I wrote down is, when I think of an apple, in order to find the seed of the apple, it requires you to eat the apple. In order to get to the root or to the core of an onion, it requires for you to peel back the onion. So one of the things that I wrote down after I heard that quote is, to find your seed, it requires you to peel things back. You can't plant until you're peeled. So then it took me through this process of, journaling and writing down different things. And it got me to this place of 5 areas where, in 5 seasons, that I believe all leaders have to go through before you're producing results at your school, and before you can build a culture of positivity within your school. The first step is called the prying step. It's for you to pry. And when we think about you prying for something, I think of that childlike behavior when we're trying to pry information out of somebody, or we're trying to look through the house and find where our toy is, or go into our drawer and trying to find, toys, or whatever the case may be. And how I attach that to educators and to school spaces or organizational spaces is, we have to seek and be willing to search for what we need in order for us to be able to create the culture of excellence that we actually want to be able to establish within our school. What that searching and prying looks like is, I want you to go out to great institutions, to high-performing institutions, reputable institutions, and I want you to go search who's doing great things. And I think this first step is super important, because this allows you to be exposed to what excellence looks like in practice. This allows us to be exposed what positivity or excellence looks like in classrooms. This allows us to be exposed to what positivity or excellence looks like in our interactions between leaders and teachers, or teachers and students, or teachers and parents, or parents and leaders. This allows us to understand excellence in regards to the processes and systems that we need to be able to integrate within our school so that we can be able to have a culture of excellence, but then also a culture that is sustainable as well. When at every level where I have been able to lead, it's required me to learn from other people. As a former director of school culture and advancement, prior to doing that work, I reached out to other directors of school culture and directors of advancement, whether on the higher education level or even in the K-12 space, to see what makes this role effective. What does success look like? How am I measuring growth and success? How do I even approach this work? And even in the fundraising space, I'm thinking about all of the different things from other people. What does success look like in this role? When you think about your role, when you think about your role as a leader, or even your role to be able to create a vision for your institution, I want you to think about who out there you can learn from that's doing it at scale. Who out there you can learn from that if that person came to your school, they'd be able to just duplicate what they're doing, but with your specific population of individuals or students. That's number one. We have to be willing to search or to pry what we need, or create a standard or get exposed to something that's better than what we're doing. Number two is, once we have searched and pried and gotten that information and seek something outside of our own knowledge, now it requires, step two is peeling. It's a peeling process. Look, I don't care if you're in ministry, in education, in corporations, we all call it differently. Some call it a breaking process, a peeling process, a shedding process, a dying process, whatever the process needs to look like for you. When you think of the process of iron sharpens iron, we all know the quote, but we don't really understand there's something that has to leave iron. There's a breaking of the iron. There's a shedding so that it can actually get sharper. When you think of pottery taking place, I was on a conversation earlier today with a colleague of mine, and she reminded me, even in pottery, there's a removal process that has to take place. So when you think about your peeling process, what needs to be peeled back, what needs to be unpacked, what needs to be shedded from your organization so that we can actually commit to creating the standard of excellence or the culture of positivity that we are prying for earlier. So once we start searching, and once we start getting exposed, and once we start doing this work and communicating and conversing with other individuals that are doing this at scale, it requires us to go through a peeling and an unpacking and a shedding process so that we can be able to get sharper in this work that we're doing. When you think about this shedding process, and this can apply to your life, your leadership, or how you run your organization. When you think about this shedding process, what needs to be lost? What needs to die? Whether it's patterns, whether it's certain perspectives, whether it's certain people, whether it's certain processes, what are the things that need to be removed or even assessed better or analyzed better so that we can be able to pull back the curtain and really see where the mess is so that we can use that mess to be able to create miracles for the students or the people that we are being called to serve. So yes, we have to pry, we have to search, we have to seek. But then second, we have to peel, we have to unpack. We have to be able to go through a shedding process for us to understand, like, look, what is it that we're not doing well? Where does the gossip lie? What is the current culture? What does positivity actually look like? How will people assess the level of excellence within our classrooms? That's number two. Number three is the planting. And personally, I believe that I'm still in stage 2 in this season that I'm in. I went through the seeking process and going to God to be able to understand, God, what did you need me to do within this season, this transitional, this identity transition that I'm continuing to go through in this season. And then he had to peel me back. He had to shed me from a lot of different things to be able to reveal to me, all right, these are the things that I need you to work on. These are the things that I need you to kill. These are the things we're going to continue to grow in, but these are the things that you got. The peeling process, like I talked about earlier, is pulling back that onion, pulling back that apple, pulling back that watermelon so that you can be able to get to the seed, and then we can be able to, in step 3, plant it. You can't produce fruit until a seed is planted. You can't produce result until something is planted. And the plantings is those values. What are the values of your organization, and do teachers align with those values? Do the processes on how you run your building align back to those values and those mission statements? Do our recruiting and interviewing process align with those values? Does our onboarding or offboarding align with those values? Does everything come back to us being rooted and planted and being able to stand firm in what we believe as an organization and as an institution? I had a great conversation with a friend of mine, Dr. Jones, and she builds cultural initiatives and helps schools do great work culturally in reassessing their school buildings so that every physical space can be able to connect with the mission, the vision, and the values of the school. And she reminded me earlier when we had a conversation that, look, I need to see your values when I'm walking through your building. And I'm not just talking about the words, I'm actually talking about visuals that can show me that values in action. Do you even know your values to the point where you don't have to have them up or look at them to be able to effectively communicate them? Do all of your staff have that same type of commitment and energy? And do we know our mission like the back of our hand? Are we embodying these principles on a day-to-day basis? See, positivity can be seen as a sense of like a woo-woo, like, oh, we're all happy, we're all optimistic, but we can't be optimistic and positive if we're not searching and we don't have a standard of excellence. We can't be positive if we're unwilling to be able to peel back the curtain and really be able to work on these things. We can't be positive if we don't know our values or our mission and we're not standing on that and holding people accountable and creating consequences so that we can create ownership within our building to be able to meet these standards. And then number 4 is the preparing process. This is where I believe that a lot of schools kind of fall off. They're really good with having examples out there in the prying process that show, hey, there's great things happening, innovative and creative and fun that we can be able to integrate. Then they're really good with the data analysis, because I know a lot of educators out there that do really, really well with analyzing the data and pulling back the gaps. Even it get shorter and shorter, the smaller and smaller population of then there's schools that really stand on their values. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of high performing schools are really rooted in values and their mission aligned. And that's what we're seeing when we're working with schools across the country, is that the schools that are producing more have a deeper connection with their values, their mission, and their overall belief system as an organization and institution. But where we start to see schools fall off is the stage 4, which is the preparation stage. This is the sustaining. This is the development process that schools have to go through. And the development process that a lot of schools have to go through require more than just a leader, more than just an administrator, and more than just a few people. It requires unity and a unified front where we're all owning the results, we're all owning the standards, we're all owning the mission, we're all owning the values, we're all owning the end goal for where we're trying to get to or what we're trying to be able to accomplish as an educational institution. So yes, we have to pry, we have to search, we have to go find an example of excellence. Number 2, we have to peel. We have to go through a shedding and an iron sharpening iron process so that we can be able to remove the things that are not going to allow us to be able to get to the place that we want and desire, and be able to integrate the things that we deserve to be able to create for our students, because our students deserve our absolute best. Then number 3 is the planting process. Look, we have to be planted and firm, because we can't produce fruit from a tree that is always moving. We can't produce fruit from a tree that is always moving. Until that tree is rooted, until that tree's roots are in the ground and going deep, it allows that tree to be firm to then be able to produce fruit and when the next season comes. And then in order for us, once we plant that seed of vision, once we plant that seed of positivity, once we plant that seed of of success in the minds of our teachers and all of the stakeholders of our school, now it's important for us to go through a development and a harvest or not even a harvest, a development and a nurturing process. A nurturing process. How are we integrating professional development? Are we inviting our parents in the building to be a part of this process? Are we talking to the actual end user, which is our students, to be a part of this process? Are we inviting community members in to be able to connect with us on this vision of excellence that we're working to create? Look, in order for you to be able to get the partnerships that you need, to be able to produce the results that you need to be able to prove why you're a school of excellence. In order for us to be positive when we're walking in the building and optimistic, we have to be rooted in something. We have to understand the goals that we're trying to achieve. We have to have the people on the team that are actually committed to being able to transform our institution in a way where we can get behind that person. Now, whether that's you or whether that's somebody else on your team, stage 1 is the prying, it's the searching phase. Stage 2 is the peeling, it's the shedding phase. Stage 3 is the planting, and that's that standing phase. Stage 4 is the preparing and the sustaining phase, and then it leads us to stage 5, which is the producing phase. It's the production. This is when we're producing high level in the classroom. This is when our students are engaged. This is when our teachers are retained. This is when our parents are committed. This is when our communities and our community partners are present. You cannot produce fruit until your seed is planted. You cannot find your seed until you are peeled, and you cannot begin your peeling process until you are prying and searching for something more outside of yourself. Yes, this is important for a school to be able to integrate on a day-to-day basis, but I want you to think of a different approach. In order for you to actually become the leader that your team is optimistic about, you have to become a better person. You have to go through a journey where you're searching inside of yourself where you're actually being called to go. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where are your opportunities of growth? You have to go through a peeling process and shed off the dead weight on the things that are going to hold you back and hold your school back and hold your organization back from actually becoming great in the ways that it deserves to become. In order for you to peel back, it's going to allow you to get to that seed, that gift, that skill, that talent, that amazing differentiating factor that you've been given so that you could be able to plant it. You got to understand your values, because it's your values that's going to make you valuable. And once you plant it, you got to nurture it. What are the things that you're doing on a daily basis to be able to nurture the type of culture as a leader, the type of excellence as a leader, and the type of success as a leader that you expect from your team, that your students deserve on a daily basis? So we have to pry, we have to peel, we have to prepare, and we have to plant. So that then that allows us to get to a point where we're producing at a high level of success. Yes, we understand how positivity can shape our school culture, can shape how we do things as a school. Yes, we understand that teacher optimism and positivity contributes to collective efficacy and the belief that staff togetherness can make a difference. Yes, we understand that schools with higher collective efficacy have better student engagement and student achievement. Yes, we understand that staff room positivity is just as important as classroom positivity, and that what teachers feel about each other influences student outcomes. We understand these things. We understand that positivity spreads socially, and when one teacher models joy, optimism, and encouragement, colleagues and students are more likely to catch those emotions. Look, one of the questions that we ask every single episode of the Contagious Culture podcast is what culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. That's another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and we'll see you all next episode.